So guys, with the most recent article going over all of the different exotic armor updates we are set to receive with Renegades, today I wanted to go off and list just a couple exotics from this list that I highly recommend everyone go and grab in case you wanted to try out some new builds once Renegades launches. Now, before we jump into each exotic that I recommend, let's go over first how you actually get your hands on exotic engrams really easily. Now, the main source is probably going to be from your reward pass. If you're claiming all of the rewards here, you should have a couple exotic engrams waiting for you if you haven't already claimed them, so make sure to do that. Alongside that, just claim any rewards you haven't done so already before the new DLC drops. But if you really want to focus farm exotic engrams, the main thing you're going to want to do is head over to the world tab and just pick any destination that you really like. Let's say the moon here, for example, and you're going to want to pay attention to what the specific lost sector marked on the map is. You can see here that the K1 Revelations lost sector is the current expert lost sector available on this destination, but if you go over to the Cosmodrome here, you can see that Vale's Labyrinth is the current lost sector there, and by doing it solo you have a rare chance of getting exotic engrams. And obviously if you choose to do a higher difficulty version of this activity, you'll of course get a higher chance of getting exotics to drop. So just go into these things on your own, get them done, and you should have a pretty consistent drop chance for getting exotic engrams, which you can then turn into Master Hall in the Tower into many of these different exotics. Now, going into which exotics I'd recommend, first for the Hunter, it's going to be Graviton Forfeit. If you're a fan of going invisible, which many of you hunters should be, Graviton Forfeit is actually getting a huge amount of buffs with Renegades. Now first off, what does Graviton Forfeit currently do? Well, it comes with Vanishing Shadow, which increases the duration of any invisibility effect. While you are invisible, you also gain increased melee regen and your weapons reload faster, and your class stat is also greatly increased. So you're going to be gaining more melee and class ability regeneration, as well as a faster reload just from going invisible. And thanks to the helmet, increased duration on that invisibility effect, which is going to be really helpful. Now, if we go over to the article, we'll go over the changes this exotic is getting. First off, this now grants improved grenade, melee, and class ability regen for a moderate duration each time you become invisible, with this stacking up to 3 times, and this effect does not deplete when you are invisible. So if you stay invisible for a long enough time, you should just be getting a whole load of ability regeneration, which is going to be very good. And also at 3 stacks of this buff, successful triggers additionally grant you a Void Overshield, which is going to be helping you out even more there with your general survivability. So if you're wanting a good survivability Void helmet, this one is definitely going to be one to keep an eye out for. Now in terms of the roles I'd recommend you get, a specialist role isn't going to be bad, but you could also go for a brawler role as well if you want to be focused more on your melee. It just depends on which way you want to become invisible, either by dodging or by using your smoke bomb grenade. Now for the aspects on the build, obviously you are going to want to use both Trapper's Ambush and Vanishing Step, because both of these abilities will allow your melee and class ability to make you invisible, which is very good. And in fragments, the main one is going to be Echo of Persistence, where your void buffs applied to you, which include invisibility, have an increased duration, which will stack with the helmet, so you can just be invisible for an insanely long time and be generating ability energy like crazy. Next, let's go over Lucky Raspberry. For those who don't know, this is an arc-based chess piece, and it has Probability Matrix, where it increases the chaining capabilities of arc bolt grenades and damaging enemies with jolt lightning strikes and collecting ionic traces will both grant additional arc bolt grenade energy. Arc bolt grenades can stun overload champions and delay their health regen. So this is going to be pretty decent, but the buffs with Renegades are going to make it even better. So if we look over here, Lucky Raspberry, basically just general buffs there to the arc bolt, which is going to be great, but the main thing is that now it will always apply jolt on arc bolt grenade hits, meaning anything that you hit with your arc bolt grenade is going to jolt, and returns arc bolt energy on any application of jolt debuff or triggering the jolt chains on a target already affected by the debuff. So you can now jolt things way more consistently with your arc bolt grenades, but also if you just have an arc weapon that has either jolting feedback or volt shot, those kills or damage with the jolt effects from those weapons will be granting you even more grenade ability energy, which is going to be insane. So if you want an arc grenade spam build, Lucky Raspberry is definitely going to be something to keep your eyes out for. And if you're looking for a specific role, I'd definitely go for a Grenadier focused role so that you're getting as high a grenade stat as possible. If you can get this to 200, you're going to be even increasing the damage of your grenades, which is just going to help out a lot more with the general build. And then finally, for 100 exotics, the other one I'm going to recommend is probably Orpheus Rig. Now, currently, the only thing that we know buff-wise coming to this exotic is that it's just going to increase the duration of your Tether Super, which is great. And next week, we should be expecting a whole article going over ability changes, where I'm hopefully expecting there to be a lot more tied to what is coming with Void Hunter here, so that the Deadfall anchors maybe do a whole lot more. But if you want to have a more supportive, focused build, this exotic is still really, really good for just generating you back super energy. And I would highly recommend a super oriented stat roll on these exotic boots, just so that you can get that stat as high as possible. You don't really need it to be above 100 because this isn't really a damage super, but as long as you get it to a 100 stat there just to have the maximum super regen, that's going to be all you really need. Now though, heading over to Titan for exotic armor changes. First one is going to be Arbor Warden. Now, I'm not going to lie, when I first read this, I completely forgot what Arbor Warden actually was as an exotic, but apparently this thing is now going to be really, really good, especially when you pair it with some certain subclasses. If I can select the correct thing here. For those who don't know, Arbor Warden, which I still don't even have at this point, is a exotic chess piece that will allow you to use your class ability to channel defensive light inward, providing a grenade that creates a barricade on impact. So this is basically just a unique way of you creating a barricade, which isn't really all that interesting. But when Renegades launches, this thing will allow you to pick up 3 orbs of power, enhancing your next barricade. The enhanced barrier nade now spawns a Y pattern of 3 of your equipped barricades on barrier nade detonation, and this does work with barricade modifications like Drenger's Lash and Storm's Keep, meaning if you have Drenger's Lash and throw this barrier nade out, it's now going to generate 3 barriers that are also sending out that suspending burst, which is going to be very, very good. And if you're a Storm's Keep enjoyer, just generating more barriers so you can spread around that bolt charge effect is going to be so, so good. So if you're wanting a more supportive focus build or just want to suspend stuff very, very easily, Arbor Warden is definitely going to be something to keep an eye out for. In terms of the roles here, I feel like you're going to want to use either a Grenadier or class-based role. I don't know how this exotic actually works. You might need to let me know in the comments down below, but I'm guessing it would be based off of your grenade stat. So if you can try and get a role that has both grenade and class stats, that's probably going to be the best option for you. Moving on, let's take a look at some other exotics here. Second Chance, honestly, might not be too bad. This, if you don't know, is a Void Titan based exotic that allows you to gain a second charge of your shield throw melee, and your shield throw melees now weaken targets and become shield piercing, stunning barrier champions. When you stun a barrier champion with your shield melee, you regen a melee charge, which is very good on its own, but in Renegades, once again, it's getting a whole load of buffs here. So they're adding in spawns Void Breaches on shield throw final blows, grants shield throw melee energy on picking up a Void Breach, and your Sentinel Shield super range attacks, shield throw, now also weaken with this exotic equipped. And they've also fixed a bug where the anti-barrier shield throw melee wouldn't bounce to more than 2 targets. So this has just opened up a whole load of opportunities for build crafting into this exotic. If you don't know already, on the Void subclass, you can already build into a very potent kind of build that allows you to take advantage of Void Breaches in so many ways. There's an actual nice pairing of fragments that allows you to spawn in an Orb of Power and a Void Breach, and also gain Devour when you pick up an Orb of Power and a Void Breach, which is just really, really good. And because Weaken's tied into the exotic now, it'll also just pair very, very nicely with these fragments. You're going to want to use Echo of Harvest and Echo of Starvation. These two together is going to be very, very potent with this build. And also, in case you want to be getting this exotic in terms of a role, you definitely want to be getting a melee-oriented stat version, because at 200 stat, if you get it into melee, you're going to be increasing the damage of all your melee abilities, which will increase the damage of that shield throw ability, which is just going to be very, very potent. In terms of other exotic changes though, I don't really think there's much really else that is crazy good just from reading it here. Obviously we'll need to wait and see what else comes with Renegades, but Titans, remember you are getting the jetpack exotic, which I feel like most of you guys are going to be using anyway. Now though, let's jump into the real juices here, which are the Warlock exotic armor changes. So for the first exotic here, I'm going to recommend people go and grab Winter's Guile. Honestly, you guys, if you watched my video where I went over this before, you should know how potent this is going to be. So if you don't know what Winter's Guile currently does, I believe it's the only Warlock exotic currently in the game that allows you to kind of build into a melee focused build, but even saying that, melee Warlock builds aren't really anything outside of like Prismatic Warlock with the Lightning Surge, but for those who don't know, this comes with the Warlord's Sigil perk, where defeating targets with melee attacks increases melee damage, and targets frozen by Penumbral Blast automatically shatter, which I guess is okay, but in Renegades, it's just becoming an absolute beast, at least here on paper. So, melee and finisher final blows will now grant melee damage, melee final blows grant 1 stack, and finisher's final blows will grant 3 stacks. Max is 10 stacks for a plus 400% melee damage. Stacks are lost one at a time, which last for 4.5 seconds. Once you reach 10 stacks, you immediately also gain 1 melee charge and enter the Warlord's Rage when you activate your melee ability. You have 10 seconds to activate Warlord's Rage, and while in Warlord's Rage you gain dramatically increased melee regen speed, faster melee speeds, melee damage bonus is increased to 500%, lasts for 10 seconds, and loses all stacks once Warlord's Rage ends. This is going to be insanely strong. I believe the Destiny 2 Twitter account kind of referenced this as being like the Sunbracer's equivalent, but for melee. So if that's actually true, you're going to be getting so many melee charges once you enter Warlord's Rage. So if you're going to be wanting to pay attention for that exotic, make sure you get one that has a high melee stat. Get that stat to 200 so you can get even more melee damage out of it, and just have a blast with any melee Warlock exotic builds. Obviously the Prismatic Electric Slide build that a lot of people are using, that's going to be even better with this, but there might be some other secret melee builds that we aren't currently using that might become even more potent once this exotic buff goes through. Next, in terms of exotic buffs, we of course have to talk about Metaiodoxia. Now, this is honestly becoming probably one of the most used Warlock exotics once this change goes through. For those who don't know what this does already, comes with the Stylostyxis perk, where targets damaged by Arcane Needle emit a suspending detonation when defeated, and landing multiple Arcane Needles on the same target immediately triggers a larger, more powerful detonation. Defeating suspended targets also grants melee energy, and your Arcane Needles are strong against anti-barrier champions. Now, if you don't know what the changes coming to this exotic are, they are very potent. Now, hitting a target with 5 Needle Storm super projectiles will also activate the Stylostyxis suspending burst, and the burst caused by the super deals radically increased damage to all targets caught in the radius. This burst should allow Needle Storm to feel like a damage contender to the likes of Curus Thunder Crash, which means we now have an insane damage option for Warlock, which is going to be just insanely strong. For the longest time, Hunters have had Nighthawk, Titans have had Curus, and now Warlocks, we finally have our answer here. Now, many people probably already farmed a Metaiodoxia to get a good suspending build on Strand Warlock, but now you're probably going to want to refarm it and focus for a role that has a primary super stat. Getting this to around 200 is going to be very good, just for the increased damage on your super. I feel like, though, if you at least get it to like 150, or just above 100 generally, you should be okay there. But this exotic is going to become very good once Renegades comes out, so I definitely recommend people go and farm it. Now, for the last exotic that I want to mention here on Warlock, one that I am personally very hopeful for, is going to be Dawn Chorus. Now, for those who don't know, this Warlock exotic currently is actually pretty decent if you just want a general usage solar Warlock exotic. Now, sadly, it is one of the ugliest exotics in the game, but with Renegades, they're adding in the universal exotic ornaments feature, so that'll be sorted. And in terms of the perks that this thing has, it says that your Daybreak projectiles deal more damage and scorch targets on impact. Your Scorch is improved, and you gain a small amount of melee energy when your Scorch damages a target. With Solar Warlock, you're able to Scorch people in many different ways, so you're just constantly able to get that melee regeneration back, and the super damage isn't anything crazy. But with the updates coming in Renegades, this thing is now going to be able to ignite targets on every cast of the actual super projectile, and currently you can throw 10 of those Dawn Blades out in a single super. So every single one of those projectiles, each 10 that you are shooting out, will ignite on a single hit of the projectile, which is absolutely insane and could actually be good for overall damage. We'll of course have to test that out, but it's looking pretty decent, and that isn't even including maybe some upcoming Solar Warlock buffs or nerfs, that should be announced in next week's ability tuning article, which I'll of course make a video on once that releases. But for right now, those are the exotics that I highly recommend people go and grab before Renegades launches. Once again, we still don't know much about the general sandbox for Renegades right now, so we'll be waiting for the article next week. So if you want to be up to date as always, be sure to stay subscribed to the channel. And if you've enjoyed this video, if you could leave a like as well, I'd very much appreciate it. But with that all said, hopefully you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next one.